There it goes. Caught a little bit of... What was that? Jimmy Eat World? It's from a compilation of songs that are featured on, or they do tributes to those songs on the Trolls movies. My kids are always watching the Trolls movies, and I wanted them to hear, like, hey, you know, that's based on a real song I used to listen to. I was grateful someone had put together a compilation of those original songs. We'll see if I get... Hey, good morning. Welcome back. Today's a big day. Today's a day that I strip away all of my amazing... My vulnerabilities will be laid bare as I relearn how to color. This will be interesting. Okay, so this image has been sort of... Yeah, I'm interested too. Will you teach me? So, as compared to some of the previous versions of these images, I basically realized that all the shading that I added to these, like with the occlusion shading, that should have probably come after I did the lighting. And you live and learn. We still have it like as layers, but we may not bring it back for much longer. What I did do on the last stream was I cut up the image into 12 separate images that can now be worked on separately. And so now when I update, do art updates on this, and I save it, and I save a new file, I don't have to save an entirely new 600 megabyte file just to have those new updates saved in a new version. Now I can save them into smaller versions, and it's going to be easier for my computer and everything else. Yeah, but remember to save. That's the key. Boy, that hit me on Friday on a real job. I was doing work, and I was like, cool, on to the next one. And then I came back to it later, and I was like, where's the drawing I just did? And I didn't save it. I made a perfect drawing, and I didn't save it. There's no way to record, no way to bring it back. So and so this will be, and I don't have a super long availability window here because this is a Monday and kids have school and things. Let's look at what we have and what is useful. So if we look at this, we can see that we saved the color layer, essentially a merged color layer that allows us to do something sort of cool. We can use the selection tool to well, if it works, that is. Well, generally speaking, I would use this to select out areas that have the same color. So like his skin, for instance. Wow. Is that right? It's going to select these two colors and consider them the same. That's not good. Can we do better than that? Okay. Okay, well, this will allow me to do what I'm thinking. But first, actually, I want to just... Man, it's getting this gray in there, too. Why? Why are you doing that? Okay, so essentially I've selected the green part of his clothes. I can hide the selection tool. And then come over here where I have his color layer. And now I can draw directly onto those specific areas. So you can see here that I've selected, and I can be specific about what I'm doing simply to those areas. And that makes it look like he's radioactive, so we don't do that. So what color are we gonna, how are we gonna light this thing? So there's gonna be two sources of light. As I'm sort of thinking it. For the story, I want it to be that he is hiding in the shadow. So he's in the foreground, he's hiding behind this mound of sand, and he's hiding in the shadow. So he is mostly going to be not lit up by any real bright light source. Maybe over here, like at the tip of his hat, he can start to poke out into the light. I think I'm okay with that. Maybe like the tip of his sword can feel like it's getting hit with some light. Maybe the tip of his shield. But for the most part, I want him to remain in the shadow. You know, that doesn't look like it's too crazy. But his more dominant light source is going to be this sort of cool blue ambient light that is really just sort of so it'll probably be easiest just to demonstrate it by drawing it. But like if you're hanging out, it's a sunny day, but you're hanging out under a tree, or maybe not under a tree, but you're hanging out in an area that is shaded, like under an umbrella, for instance, then the light may have more to do with a sort of cool, the reflection more from the sky, which is just sort of everywhere and a little bit bluish and not very intense. It's not very bright compared to the sun. So that's what I'm going to try and replicate here. So if I select the color here, this might be tough to see. But down here, these are the RGB sliders. Red, green, and blue. And their relationship to each other is what describes this green. Now we can look at this and see that it's green. But mostly it's just sort of this dark color. It's the relationship to the other colors in the scene that really help sell that it's obviously green. We can see this red over here. It's very much in contrast to that red. It's very much in contrast to that blue. It's very much in contrast to the yellow of the sand. And that helps reinforce the greenness of it. What we can do is do a very gentle. Hold on, and I definitely have to check my settings here for the Wacom tablet. Make sure that this is, you can see, well, you can't see, but here I had this, the setting is way over here, just needs to be more in the middle. Let's make this. Just to test it. Okay. Because this is a soft light that we're going to add. Okay. So you see these 3 little dots. And so that's the relationship. That their little orientation, this sort of triangle, is what makes greenness green. They're all towards the dark end of the spectrum, but there's just a little bit more green in the middle than the red on top and the blue on bottom. If we make them all equal, then the color is gray. It's neutral. So that's hard to see because it's so dark. It's like dark on dark, but you can see that that is grayer than that. If we just make it so that the blue is dominant, it becomes a blue color. If we go back to making them even and just pump up the red, then it's a red color. Here's a little bit of a max factoid, is I'm kind of colorblind. So I don't see that as very intense. It would be hard for me to guess what color that is. I can kind of see this as green pretty well. I'm a genius. I figured how to watch full screen with chat. Oh, you are a genius. Good for you. Well, you don't want to miss my genius. There won't be much genius in this stream. This is going to be me sort of getting reoriented with how I used to do this. Okay. So what happens when we shine a light on something, right? I'm not like I can tell there's lights behind me that have color. Like that's blue and that's kind of pink, you know. But there are certain colors where I'm like, I have no idea what color that is. It looks gray to me. And people will be like, oh, it's very, very purple. I'll be like, no, it's gray. Or they'll be like, I'll be like, that is a brown blanket. And they will be like, no, it is olive green. You are colorblind. So it's a reality for me, is that I do struggle a little bit with this stuff. So that's also part of why I might need the help of chat to let me know if I'm using pink when I should be red or whatever. But seeing it mathematically laid out in a kind of this triangle of order is a good hint for me with this stuff. Okay. When we add light to something, yeah, good. You'll let me know if it looks bad. And here's another caveat: this is actually going to look bad until it is almost done. So that's the other thing, is we have to be a little bit patient with the process. Also knowing that I'm going to make mistakes and I'm going to have to redo things, but it's just how it's going to happen. It just is. So. All right, so when we add light to something, it is going to become brighter. And if we keep the same relationship, if we just shift everything over, but we keep that same color relationship, it should look like we are just adding brightness to it. And that's probably about where I would want that to be. And then it's just a question of, can we also add a little bit of blue light so that it feels influenced by the blue? This is a little bit tricky too, because there's a little bit of Z depth that needs to be accounted for. Like, this hat isn't just flat to camera. It needs to sort of have a... You know, I feel like I want it brighter than that, but I don't know if I do. Let's just see what happens if we go like this a little bit. Now, I remember it being super important to not rush this stuff. You're really used to reward some patience and taking the time. If it felt like if I got sloppy with it, it would not reward me. Yeah, it's going to be subtle to start out. The being heavy-handed with it is not going to yield anything good. It was so funny. Yesterday, I was good this weekend. I got up early and I streamed both days. And that's challenging. It's been challenging for me to, however rewarding for me to, insist upon myself that I really commit to getting this stuff in. So what'll happen is as long as I keep the relationship of the color brightness changing and the relationship of the blue shift consistent across all the form throughout the image where it needs to be consistent, it will look amazing. It will basically look amazing. I remember that being the case. And it will feel like light. Now, is it scientifically accurate? I don't know. But what it will do is it will have this great sense of consistency in the relationships of the color that feels very rewarding. And that's as good as I can probably make color happen within my limited skill ability. And that's seriously pretty good, I think. And I was taught this method by an artist whom I very much admire. It's actually a client of mine who learned it himself, not in school, but on some random Tumblr style art tutorial. Was his explanation. And he never... He sort of found it, studied it quickly, lost it, and never found it again. He was not able to determine ultimately its true source of origination, whether or not it was sort of like one of those little bit of a spooky, like, how did this come about, you know? And it's not like it's too counterintuitive or anything like that. It's just not something I've looked for something similar out there, and like maybe he lost it, but maybe I can find it. And I can't find a tutorial that does this either, so this is something I use, and I don't feel like that. I definitely don't feel like I have any kind of exclusive ownership over. I didn't come up with it. My friend didn't come up with it. He's popularized it somewhat where he can, in his limited ability to take time to teach his colleagues. Taught me. He did a demo for younger artists at the studio we were working at. But as far as I know, I was the only one who actually paid attention. In all these interesting, colorful folds, there's all this difficult in and out getting darker, getting brighter, getting darker, and it's like waves of fabric, right? We don't want to just ignore that. That's all going to be important to follow those structures, although challenging. That's not right. Let's see here. Hey, Liam. Good morning. Happy Monday, everybody. Okay, I'm doing a very very tepid, very non-bold dip into the color process that just essentially trying to remember how I did this back in the day. So it's kind of fun. Kind of fun to watch me struggle, maybe. Okay, but I think that looks good for now. And so there's another component to this too, is once all the colors and the relationships are in place, we can do something very interesting, because it sort of has it takes on like the quality of an underexposed piece of photography. So then we can do interesting things like take it into Photoshop and expose with like some of the photo sliders for certain lighting effects. Essentially, really sweeten the composition with like really tweaking some of those cool settings, and unlike like a typical drawing, which wouldn't really react well to some of those sliders, this approach really does. So it's cool. Okay, so let's try something challenging now. Let's do the pants. Let's do the pants before we try anything too challenging. So I'm going to select. So we see here the color master layer. I can select into that. I don't even have to have it open or visible, I can select into it. And so we can use that to affect just the pants. And we're going to try the same thing. Okay, so this is the color relationship of the pants. The color, so this is, it's like a slant. Let's see, what was the degree of the... So if we're looking at the shirt, how we did the color for the shirt. The original color is something like this. It's got that triangle of green. And then as we move towards the light, we see it shift to something more influenced by blue. It looks like it jumps up. It goes from like 28, 36, 28 to... up 12 points. 12 to 20. Okay. We want to try and keep those relationships the same. Right now, there's no in the pants, because I'm watching the numbers slide around. And you can do this visually. It doesn't have to be like mathematically correct to the number, although it looks good if you do. Okay. Difference between here. I'm looking for like the distance that it hops, because if I can keep that more or less the same, it's a very subtle change. So if we keep that slant, it's basically the same color, just brighter, and then we add more blue influence. And that might be too much. But let's see. That could work. I think it's a little too bright. We don't necessarily want it to feel like it's reacting too much, but we do want it, as long as it, like, the degree that it reacts to the light color sort of speaks to the materiality of the clothes. Like how shiny and how reflective are the clothes. Yeah, that's not too bad. To be a little subtle with some of this stuff. Yeah, that's not bad. It would be best, I think, later on for me to go in and scuff up some of this stuff. Like, Link isn't... like, it's not a Broadway production, right? He's a warrior crouched in the sand. Like, his stuff shouldn't look super clean. And there's effect here where it is looking a little too clean. Okay. Subtle but good. And now, here too, there's going to be a little bit of reflection right there, I think. The other day, literally yesterday, I was watching the way light was reflecting off of people's skin in the shadows, trying to take notes at like what angles, where was light unexpectedly making itself known. And then later on, like if it was bright sand, for instance, Like we'd probably, just by means of demonstration, imagine the sand underneath him was super bright. We'd keep that relationship, but to a brighter extent, and then add red and a little bit of green to make yellow, or yellow reflection. And it might look something like that on the underside of the planes. That doesn't look like enough yellow. A lot of that looks like more influenced by yellow, you know. But the sand, he's hiding in the shadow. So the sand around him isn't very brightly lit. It's going to be more brightly lit over here where there's going to be sort of like this diagonal division with a little bit of rim light on the sand dune. Maybe catching glimpses of the reflection where it gets tall. Okay, so this will be kind of fun. Let's try and do these boots. Are these boots and gloves the same color? They are. Great. They're almost the same color as this belt. Why did I pick so many different colors? I guess it was just down to the original artist who designed Link, because I was just color picking from his palette, their palette, wherever they are. What is the color of this sword hilt? It's a different color. All right. But his gloves, his boots, and this pack, or whatever, are all the same color. We'll assume they're the same material. It's kind of like a leathery leather. So we've got our selection there. We can turn off the marquee tool. And then we apply our little formula. Bring this over here a little bit more. Okay. Just a little bit of the stuff. And it's interesting. It still has that diagonal, but it's more of a slanted diagonal, which means it's going to have a higher saturation of the red compared to the blue and green. So we've added some light, and now we're going to add a little bit of blue light. Let's see what that looks like. And this is fun because it ends up getting like this really subtle purpley kind of color. Remember the triangle of the green? Well, this is inverted from that. You got, like, I know it's so small. It's down here. It's the tiniest little effing thing. But the triangle that describes the green of Link's, like the triangle that was, you know how green and purple are like opposite colors, basically. It's reflected here in the shape of this. The triangle pointed the other way, that was a green color. The triangle points this way, it's a purple color. It's interesting. Okay, and we can subtly apply the subtle color across his gloves. And it just has this nice feeling of reacting to the same light source. And the more we do this, the more it sort of goes and builds and builds and builds, the more it really starts to feel like it's being lit. Even if it's super subtle. And I apologize if it's like, Max, that's great, but like the effect is so hard to see on the screen. That could be the case. It's not like I hear you complaining, but it, but this is, I need this light source to be subordinate to what will come later, which will be like a very dominant light source that is hitting the monster in the background. Because remember, Link is hiding in the shadow. We can't just light him up willy-nilly. His light needs to be subtle. But his boots, like leather, like nice leather, is reflective. We're definitely going to see some of that. It's looking decent. Yeah, pretty pleased with. There might even be, yeah. Can't go nuts with it, but because the leather is so reflective, I think we could make a case to have at least some reflection of the sand happening where his boots are low to the ground. Nothing wrong with that. Okay. Let's do... It's starting to come back to me. It really is. I'm enjoying this again. Yay! Yeah, well, I mean, there will be issues. There will be issues, but right now this feels like it's off to a good start. You haven't been reminding me to save. What if my stuff crashed right now? I'm saving my work right now. It's happening. Oh, and it goes so quickly now because it was just a. It's okay. I had you captivated by the process. Lulled you into like a false sense of security. That's okay. If we had to start over again, we just start over again. Okay. So, right now we're doing the... Yeah, this is basically his undershirt. Same process. Let's analyze the... Let's analyze the color relationship. Okay, so it's... Do you see how the red and green are kind of more aligned on this color shape? That means it's a sort of neutral yellow is the color of his shirt. If we just keep it consistent and then add some blue light, that'll give us the color. That looks about right. The tool I'm using right now is akin to like a detail airbrush. It's a 10% opacity. I'm using a very deft touch. It's not... The application is subtle, and that's the way I want it. It's not... these light sources... This light source isn't going to cast any... You got sucked into my genius. All right. Let me do his gauntlet right here. That'll be pretty quick, and that we can. I think we can justify making that a little reflective, and it'll have a cool effect. And all the reflectivity does is it sort of shapes the way that the color is distributed, the way the light is distributed across the surface as color, and like where it goes. But the formula is still the same. Okay. So it's mostly, we can see these, the shape is basically, these are our RGB sliders. This is like your classic RGB slider that like, someone actually explained the other day that that's actually we have cones in our eyes that correspond to R, G, and B, red, green, and blue. And so that's a big part of why we bother to use RGB sliders and why RGB technology is so prevalent in technology. Okay. And I guess I could take 2 seconds to also further explain. I know most of us are just artists anyway, but this is when you combine full intensity red, blue, and green light onto the same surface, like a red flashlight, a green flashlight, and a blue flashlight. If you overlap them on a wall, it'll make white light. So, and then if you turn them all off, you don't have any light at all, so that's black. That's like the theory. So you have different combinations, like red and green, you combine them. It doesn't make brown like when you're mixing paint, it makes yellow when you're mixing light. And then blue and green, what does that make? Well, let's find out. Blue and green makes a kind of cyan color. It sounds about right. Okay, anyway, let's get back to what I was actually doing. Okay, so this is the color. Oops, I keep hiding the, it looks like it crashes, but I keep accidentally just using the wrong thing. Okay, so the leather, or the guard that he's wearing, I would have guessed it was sort of a leathery color. Yeah, I know, that's what it looks like. I would have guessed, see, this is how I know I'm colorblind, is this looks brown to me. His gauntlet here, but it's not brown. It's mostly bluish, I guess, a bluish green. It's cyan. You can tell that color is cyan. I mean, I can see over here that this is so, but that to me is like that was a surprise to me, and this is why I need it was cyan but super dark. And you're correct, it is according to this. But, like, if I didn't have this, like, whatever, color meter or whatever, some crazy color triangle, if I didn't have that to reference, you and me would be in an argument about what color it is. Because I'm like, well, I'm an artist. I'm an artiste, don't you know? It's like, you must defer to my judgment, and I'd be wrong. Okay. Bump it up. It can be reflective. Keep that same relationship, so the same shape, and then add blue. Because we're adding brightness, but we're also adding blue light. We talked about it being a little reflective, and so there it is. And in the folds where there's angles of it that feel like they're pointed more towards the camera, I'm going to make it a little bit brighter with the blue. Just to help it with some of that Z space effect, like the three-dimensionality. And there's some issues here with some of the choices I made when I was drawing. I was adding shadows where I didn't need to be. Like, there's a shadow here in the drawing. And that helped me to see the form at the time. But now that I'm in the coloring and the lighting process, that shadow is inaccurate. And it looks, what it does is it reads as dirt. Just reads as like dirty dirt, essentially. And it's messing up the process. So I was compensating too much. It's like, this feels more accurate to that kind of light effect. And now comparatively, I feel like I want to pump up the highlights on the gloves a little bit. But I'm okay with this the way it is. As long as like it's sort of the materiality of the thing, like as I'm going, like I'm feeling like, okay, I'm a little more boldened to try going a little bit farther and farther and farther. That'll be an interesting thing right now, is that like I'm really holding myself back because I don't want to like do something to like embarrass myself. Partially because I don't see the colors very well, and but mostly I just don't remember the process as intuitively as I used to. But it's interesting. I did not do any sort of like side checking or like, how did I used to do this? I opened up some of my old comic book work and I looked at it. I didn't like pour over it much, but I went through and I looked at the thing to like be like, okay, you know, did this actually work? Was I crazy when it was working? You know, I may have been a little crazy, but a little bit brighter, and add the blue. What the? Oh. And it's not a super fast process. But what I liked about it was it felt very organized. And it didn't feel like I was just making mistakes after mistakes after mistakes. Which is how I used to color things. I used to just mess up everything all the time. Oh, bad internet? I'm sorry to hear that. All right, let's try it on the skin. I think we're about to that point. Let's try the... Maybe we'll do the... Let's do the hair. Let's do the hair. And I can go maybe another 20 minutes. Let's see if we can do the hair, the skin, maybe the shield. Maybe we'll get Link basically a little bit colored up. Okay, hide that. We select the color. So this is the color of Link's hair. That's the relationship. And it's basically yellow hair. He has yellowish hair. Slightly more red than green. So it's like a slightly naturally looking blonde, I guess. And this is what the... You know, I would have made him more redhead myself, but This was just the colors that they had in the design I was referencing, so. If this was a real job, I wouldn't change much. If there was they give me a character sheet, you know, you don't want to mess with it. You want to reference it. It's not my job to improve with better color choices or whatever. Okay, so that's the color relationship. Do the same thing. Add light, and then add some blue. Now, hair is different than other materials, so this won't look too amazing. But let's see. Yeah. Like, it may not feel like it's the perfect material of hair. But it will feel like it's being influenced to the same degree as all the other stuff in the image with the same light. I'm going to pump it up ever so slightly. Just to feel like it a little more bright, a little more reflective. You know, but you can always think critically about choices like that. Like, you know, he's not Princess Zelda. He's probably got a bunch of dirt in his hair. He doesn't need to look like he came out of a shampoo commercial. If anything, he should be the before picture of a person who needs shampoo but didn't get any, right? So. And then hair has this interesting quality where it gets, what is it, darker and more desaturated? Does it work in reverse? So the process that I use is not, it definitely helps, like, pick the color that corresponds to, like, a light source influence. But it isn't something that informs too much about the process of, like, the materiality of the thing. So it's like, I can use this to figure out what the color of his tunic looks like as it's influenced by a soft blue light. I can do that. What if his tunic was made of shiny metal? That is a kind of a different thing that I'm not an expert in. And when we get to stuff like that, like, well, what's his sword supposed to look like? Well, depending on how shiny it's supposed to look, I may not be a convincing expert on that. So it'll be interesting how that goes. Or like materials like glass. Yeah, we'll run up to limits with the with what I do. But then, you know, I'll just end up using the same hacks everybody else does, right? Or silver, for instance, or gold. Like, I've tried to render things like that before, and you know, it's like, the accurate way to do that stuff is to like use computers and physics and whatnot. Not the, you know, it's like too much math really for the human brain. Okay, so now we're gonna color the skin a little bit. Okay, so this is the relationship of his skin. Mostly red, a little yellow, and far less blue. Bump it up, add blue. Let's see where that gets us. And that looks about right. Don't want to go too crazy. But skin is pretty reflective, depending on, yeah, again, how dirty is it and everything else. But you know, yes, there's dirt, but there's also sweat and grease. You know. You know, and then there's so many complications because it's like, okay, I can make the nose and cheeks a little bit more red and stuff like that. I get to that stuff like way later. That is not the point of this right now. Something that's been bugging me is the relative reflective nature of his gloves versus his gauntlet. I can see definitely that these that we need to pump it up a bit. Pump up the brightness. And in this case, I think we just pump up the brightness. Is that too subtle still? It's too subtle for it to register for me. That's a little better. Does that look right? A little bit better. Just a little bit. It's a subtle effect. And then maybe a little bit more on the boots. The boots looked okay, but maybe just a little bit more. Okay. Looking good. here on the pants, I was noticing a little bit too much blue influence there, and it needs to... Some of this stuff is so hard for me to see. Okay, let's try some of the stuff on the shield and the sword. This will be interesting. Okay, yeah, looks like... Well, depending on your definition, I did a good or bad job of separating some of these things. Each different like facet of the metal, the geometry, it's going to have a different color from each other facet. I think the one that is going to have the most sort of the clearest blue influence is this piece that's facing us the most. And we can use a polygonal selection tool to get it right. Okay. Color is this. So it's basically gray. Little bit of blue influence, just to give it, I guess, a metallic tinge. It's gonna have higher reflectivity than clothes would, so I think we can justify doing a bigger bump. Let's see how this looks. Yeah, that's decent. Yeah, it's cool. It may not be perfect, but it's gonna have the intended effect where it feels like in juxtaposition with all the other materials that feel like they're reacting with blue light, it feels at home there. The question is, what do I do with all the rest of these facets where I don't quite know? But there's going to be some blue light that they're catching. So it's just sort of varying degrees. I think that might be safe for us for now. Make a lovely little selection. Same process, just less. Is it like that? Is it like that? Doesn't have to be perfect. What I'm gonna do eventually is gonna have the influence of the yellow light. Essentially there's going to be an insinuation that either there's an open door letting in like sunset light somewhere in the distance, so that other areas are going to be more influenced by a kind of deep golden light. I know that is what I want to do down the road, so let's see what happens. But we don't see it yet. Let's just keep it neutral for now. So we can kind of, it'll be bright, but it'll be kind of neutral. For now, let's have it neutral. Oh, that was weird. Yeah. Okay. Brighter but neutral. That's not bad for now. And it's interesting. This is like, and maybe it feels like it's glinting off a little bit of the color of his face or something like that. But compared to this blue light, it looks yellowy, even though the color of it is slightly blue-gray. Sort of interesting how that works. Okay. Let's select out this bit of metal and color it. And I'm just going to steal via the eyedropper the color that's working for that. That feels okay. Does it? Is that better? Or is that better? Ugh, doesn't look as good as it should. Let's try getting a little bit more clean. That's decent for now. I mean, eventually what will probably happen is if I go in there, so this is kind of cool. If we turn off the lines, we can see how the light is sort of making its own little sculpture so far. That's a good indication that, like, okay, maybe the process isn't that crazy after all. Maybe it kinda makes sense. But what I was thinking about saying really quickly was the none. Ah, there we go. So down the road, I will probably take some of these lines and just paint them out. Because if there's a dark line where there's supposed to be like a bright highlight, something needs to be done about that. You know. But that can be down the road. Or it can be more subtle, maybe. So it's not competing as much. Just a thought. Park a little bit of a visual note for myself. Let's work on the shield a little bit. I'll use the selection tool. I'll just do this the old hard way. Select the color. It's a very neutral gray, a little bit of blue, but it's reflective. Let's up the light and add blue. It's looking decent. Okay, well, the day is getting started. Now I must finish up. Do some small things. Yeah, that looks pretty good. There's still a lot to do, but Link is off to a good start. I feel kind of jazzed about getting to the next steps. It'll be really interesting applying that. So the blue light that's influencing Link is also going to influence the sand dunes that are surrounding him and these legs that are right in front of him too. When this starts to really come together, we start to feel like not just one piece of cloth on one thing is influenced by the light, but the entire person and their costume and the area that's surrounding them and the objects that they're in opposition to, like the bad guy, for instance. They're all feeling like they have the same sort of lit quality. It really starts to look pretty darn cool. So that'll be fun. This will be fun to theory and application. I know I've been hyping it just a little bit, but I'm excited to see. And we're going to explore, like, where does this run up against a wall? How far can it get us? In my experience, it gets us basically 90 89 to 90% there. So just following this method, you will have a good result every time. And it's pretty formulaic, which is nice, but it's versatile, works, and usually if it stops working, there's a reason that still corresponds to logic and reality. So, all right, I will say thank you and goodbye to anybody who's still listening, and hope to see you next time. Adios.